Hello people, I'm Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hi there.
We're talking about CHEKKA CHIVANTHA VAANAM, also known as Crimson Red Sky. That is the English translation according to the subtitles in the film, and it's written and directed by Ratnam. It stars Arvind Swamy, T.R. Selambarasan, Arun Vijay, and Vijay Sethupathi. I forgot to mention it's also written by Siva Ananth. If you would like to know whether or not you should watch this film, I would say that if you're someone who is a cinephile, if you're someone who just loves beautiful movies, if you're someone who aspires to be a director of photography, you should definitely watch this film because it will teach you a thing or two about how to shoot a movie in terms of aesthetics, in terms of, how to move the camera, in terms of just color. In that respect, I'd say this film is definitely worth watching. Now, we both have mixed feelings about a lot of other things in this movie. Out of 5, I would say we would give it 3.
Yes, agreed.
Now, that is not lining up with the general consensus that I want to be fully transparent about that. Most people actually really like this film.
At least on IMDb. On IMDb, it got 8.4 out of 10,
yes,
which is a really high score.
That's a very high score.
But I did see on other news sites, it got around 3 or 3.5.
Okay.
So
we're not completely out of the pocket of feelings.
The pocket of
I don't know, words,
What is that?
phrases. The acting was fine. The story was, I would say the concept was interesting.
Yes,
I really like the concept of this, but I had a lot of other feelings, which I'm gonna get to in the spoiler section of this video. I feel like it's hard to talk about anything else without just pushing it into the spoiler part of the film. So with that being said, that concludes the non-spoiler section. So if you haven't watched the film yet, please go watch it and then come back to this part of the video right here where we're about to talk about the spoilers and the movie stuff. All right, before we jump into the spoilers, I just want to say one quick thing. Hopefully it's quick. I can be long-winded sometimes, I am sorry. If you're someone who loved this film and you cannot stand the idea of anyone talking ill of it in any way whatsoever, then I would strongly recommend you don't watch our spoiler section of this video because I don't want to upset you. But if you're open-minded about hearing, opinions of pros and cons about the movie and you are interested, like definitely interested in hearing what we had to say in that regard, then do stick around. But I can feel the downvotes and the negative comments already about all the things we didn't understand. Let's jump into it, shall we? The very first thing I want to talk about is something that I very much appreciated about this movie. There are some beautiful women in this film.
yes.
I don't say that lightly, and I say that in jest only a little bit. I mean, because I was beside myself watching the movie. I was like, ACHARA, do you see that?
Yeah,
right?
I was like, yes,
woman?
yes, Jaby, yes.
Yes.
She's a very beautiful woman. That is another very beautiful woman.
I was like, good.
They certainly cast some beautiful ladies in this movie.
Okay, so we got Aditi Rao Hedari.
Gosh, yeah, hottie.
I was like, is she real? Is that CGI? Is this Final Fantasy VII? Like, holy shoot. Like, you can't cuss anymore because of YouTube. But yes, good God, like.
She's a pretty lady.
She was a dream on the screen. And then we have Aishwarya Rajesh, just gorgeous, just drop dead gorgeous. And Diana Arapa, also beautiful. I'm like, oh my God. If you were to look up yes in the dictionary, her picture would be next to it. That's how beautiful this woman is. Stop it, ACHARA. They're people, not objects. They're human beings.
Yeah, they had a role. They weren't there just as plot devices.
Yes, well, okay.
They were strong,
Fair enough.
independent women.
Okay, so yes, that's a great thing to touch on. Now look, it's not the job of every single film to have everybody of every gender and every ethnicity have equal parts and equal, front spearheading of the movie. It's not the job of every goddamn movie to do that. That being said, it's hard to not notice that the women in this film were mostly plot devices. The mom is the exception, and you mentioned the wife of the main lead of Arvind Swamy's wife in the character, Varadhan's wife,
who was played by Jyotika.
His mom and his wife were both actually interesting women in the film, but all the beautiful women were more of just like plot devices more than anything else, which is sad because I really like looking at them.
They're definitely there to bring value in terms of like, wow, they're hot and they're nice to look at.
Aditi Rao Hedari
She looks nice on the big screen in close-up. I'll give you that.
Is she real? I don't think she's real. There's no way. There's just, I saw her in the movie and I'm like, that's a news reporter? That's not just a goddess who has descended upon this plane and shared her presence with us and is just like sending light everywhere she walks. The room lights up when she's on the screen.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going blind. Yeah, she was gorgeous. I can't emphasize that enough. But I do have to say, the flip side of that is she didn't have a whole lot to do other than she was this side Betty. For better or worse, it's not about the females in the movie.
It's not their story, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice if they were maybe just a little bit more fleshed out.
The mom, like I said, the mom and the wife.
The mom, but sometimes even the mom, I was just like, she wasn't very strong, except for that one part towards the end where she was like, no, I'll go talk to my son.
Yeah, exactly.
And she had that moment where she was like, please don't fight.
Well, that's what I liked about her was she showed strength and she showed that she was an active character. She was an active female character and I liked that. And then Varadan's wife was also an active character.
Yes, I liked her a lot actually because I felt like she was someone who really cared about the family. She cared about her husband and she was ready and willing to do what was necessary in order to save her family.
Yes, and Aditi Rao Hidari was beautiful. So we have Arvind Swamy, T.R. Silabarasan, Arun Vijay, and Vijay Sethupathi. I think without a doubt, Vijay Sethupathi was my favorite.
He was my favorite as well.
I kind of knew that going in because he's the one that stood out to me when we watched Vikram Vedha. Every time I see him in a trailer, I'm like, that dude is awesome. Like, I really like what he brings to the table. He's very personable. He's very interesting. He's got charisma about him.
Yeah, and he doesn't overact as well. He's really natural. And what I really enjoyed as well about his character was the kind of sarcastic, funny quips.
Yeah.
And he delivered them so well. This guy's engaging. He's interesting to watch.
Right. I want to say before we go any further that I recognize that these are all megastars in terms of like the Tamil film market. At least I think they are. Right?
Yeah, I think all of these, the four main actors are all stars in their own right.
So that being said, I felt like stylistically, the acting felt like it was going for more of, just in general, real, grounded, and understated for the most part.
Yeah.
It felt like that was more of the objective here. Instead of overplaying it and over boastful, they were going for more of the real style. I liked that. I liked that as the objective. The thing is, and maybe it had more to do with me connecting with the characters, I wasn't as thrilled with the acting from anybody else, except for maybe Prakash Raj. Prakash Raj plays the father, and I thought he did a great job. Not to say that anyone else did a bad job, I just didn't love their performances.
Well, I think overall, like just watching it objectively, I thought that they are all good actors.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's just a matter of, and I think we'll talk more about this later, but it was just really hard to connect to the characters.
Yeah.
And that's no fault of the acting.
Sure.
Because I remember the scene where Arvind Swamy kind of, he cries and he's talking about how my father never really loved me.
Right.
And I had to be here to take care of everything and my younger brothers got to go away, when will I have my moment type of thing. And I was like, objectively, I'm watching him and I'm like, wow, he's very skilled, he's really talented, but I wasn't feeling anything.
Yeah, that wasn't the moment that I appreciated his acting. I appreciated his acting more at the end of the film. When he was, like, when everything was out, like, the shit's out of the bag now, or cat's out of the bag, that's the phrase. And, he's arguing with his brothers. I thought that was actually the best scene for most of them.
Yeah.
For all three of not Vijay. Vijay was great throughout, but for the three other ones, like that was the scene where it was the most real and they were the most connected to each other. And there was just something about it where I was like, I am really buying all of this. For instance, when Arun, he was standing out of the sunroof of the vehicle, and he was talking to his brother. He was talking to his brother because his brother's down below him. His fear, knowing what's coming, knowing his brother's about to kill him. I recognized that fear and I was like, oh my God, like that felt real. That was the best acting in the entire film, which is great because it's the end of the movie, so you'd hope that's where the best of that.
It's the climax.
Like I said a moment ago, Vijay Sethupathi is the one that stood out to me as just like hands down the best in this film. He's very magnetic, The The thing I'm most anxious to talk about is the cinematography, and that's because that's the thing that jumped out at me as just stunning.
Yeah.
Just as stunning as a DT. I'm watching the movie, I'm like, this is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. Like, this is really well shot in terms of the camera placement. It's just, aesthetically, this movie is phenomenal. And it's like the reason to watch it. Costume design, colors, blocking.
Framing as well. Like, everything looked like a painting.
Right.
I was like, wow, this is so beautiful.
Yeah. It was just a very well-constructed film, production-wise. While I was watching it, I was even analyzing the costumes, and I'm like, wow, these, like, down to the watch, everything was on point. It felt lived in terms of the production, and it felt so inviting. Down to the house, the family home, the glass house.
Like, it was so beautiful, and even like all the drone shots and stuff like that. I thought they made some really interesting choices. It wasn't just like, oh, here's a scene and let's just have it kind of normal and maybe slightly boring, but like they used lots of cool perspective as well, like through archways and doorways and stuff like that. So I really appreciated that.
In the first 30 minutes or so, I thought that maybe it was just pure chance that I was feeling positive about that aspect of it. Like, oh, well, there's some good shots. But what solidified it for me was when two of the brothers were talking, Ethi and Thiago. They were talking on the boat in Dubai, and you could see the building in the background and them in the foreground, and like the colors were so rich. I was like, oh, no, this is on purpose. Like, it looks so good on purpose. It was so just craftfully done. One of my favorite shots in the film was when they introduced Vijay Sethupathi, or Rasool, and he's like, his phone's in his pocket, he keeps hitting it. And like that shot coming up from behind him, I was trying to take mental notes of like, oh, these are things that I would definitely want to do someday. Like, I just loved how it was shot.
We've seen a few trailers of Mani Ratnam movies now, and I feel like this is very indicative of his style.
Okay.
We always remark on, wow, this is really beautiful, the cinematography looks great, and I feel like that's kind of what you're expecting when you go for a Mani Ratnam movie.
I think credit should also be given to Santosh Sivan, who is the DP.
Yes.
Cinematographer, because I don't know how many times they worked together, if that was the first time they worked together or not, but DPs have a lot to do with the color of the movie and like where the lights are placed. And they work hand in hand with the director. I remember my favorite shot in the movie was when they were at Rasool's house in the last, I'd say 30 minutes of the film. Rasool and Varadhan were there talking in the kitchen, and there was like the shaft of light on Varadhan's face, and they were going back and forth, and then I think it was Ethi who shows up to, I guess, to kill him or to get him. And the camera like is going around the house and following them around. I'm like, this was really well planned. And then it gets to the part where it's like, this is the back of my home. It's like, this is where my home ends. What are you doing? Like, there's nothing beyond here. And so you had good acting, great lighting, and then great camera work, like all in one shot. And it was a long take as they moved through the entire set. It was phenomenal. So conceptually, I love the idea.
Yes.
You have a mafia family that is torn asunder by greed.
Yes.
That's the short of it, right?
Exactly, yeah. It's a power struggle. Who's gonna take over the crown?
Right. And the idea of putting the inception of this person is who is inflicting the damage, and maybe we have to go after that person, and then, the dad dies. It being engineered by Varadhan, that I apologize for saying his name incorrectly. That's all interesting. That's a very interesting concept. But in the execution of it, I didn't know who to root for.
Yeah.
I didn't know who to connect to. I didn't feel connected to anybody in this movie. I really liked looking at Aditi, but I didn't feel a connection to any of the characters in the film. Let's compare this to something that is somewhat similar. Like we've got Sarkar and Godfather, right? Those are the two films that immediately come to mind. In those films, for whatever reason, even though I felt like Sarkar was extremely slow, like compared to this especially, the Sarkar was slow.
Yeah.
I felt connected to the characters more. In The Godfather, the first hour of the film was spent getting you to know all the people so that you were like, you had something to sink your teeth into, like, and you knew who you were rooting for. I mean, you were rooting for the Corleone family, but it was Michael Corleone in particular who you were like, oh God, like, you know where this is going, and you're hoping he doesn't become part of the family. Oh, he does, and now you're just hoping. And you see, like, the rise and fall and, like, just integration of him into the mafia side of his family that he was never supposed to be part of. Here, I don't know, like, it's just kind of stuff happening, and you're like, okay, Like, these are good actors. It's shot well. It's beautiful. You got a DT, but like when it's not greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, well, it's because there wasn't an emotional hook. Maybe this is part of the story. It's to show that all of these characters are deplorable in their own way,
Right.
but you still need to feel like you can root for them. Like, Hannibal Lecter is an awful human being, but you still find yourself kind of like, ooh, Hannibal's kind of cool though, even though he's a cannibal. Whereas this, you're like, okay, I understand intellectually who you are, and I think I know what you're kind of going for, but I don't have an emotional connection to you, and I feel like that's really important in a movie.
I think part of the problem was the setup with Varadan and his dad. They showed Senapati as a very likable, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah.
Right? And they showed Varadan as this, I hate to use this word, but it's the first one that comes to mind. They showed him as a thug. I just wish that they had a way to kind of flip that, where Senapati was shown as more of the thug, and Varadan was shown as more of the person who has empathy for people. And he's kind of caught in this situation, so he's the person you least suspect, right? And you end up rooting for him at the get-go because he's not someone who necessarily is just going to beat up people. He tries to reason it out, and I don't know. That's probably a bad suggestion, but I'm just saying, like, it needed to be set up in a different way so you were rooting for him and hoping, like, he comes out of this alive. Because at some point I was confused, like, especially with the music, it felt like we were rooting for Effie and Thiago at one point because the music was, like, positive. It was a positive background score when they were like, okay, so we're going to team up and we're going to go after Varadan. I was like, okay, so I'm confused. Who am I rooting for here? Are they the good guys? Like, who's the good guy here?
Right.
And that just kind of messed me up. So what ends up happening is I was just like drawn to the most charismatic actor in the film, which is Vijay Sethupathi, who's
Who
Rasul.
then turns out that he was undercover all along.
Right.
And that was an interesting twist, though. But it kind of came out of nowhere, and you're just like, what?
It confused me, honestly, because I just didn't understand the timing of all of that. There were multiple instances where all of them were together. All of the brothers that he wanted out. I didn't understand the need for the overly complicated plan to get them into the desert where he was gonna basically have them execute each other and then he was gonna execute the last one. I was like, okay, if you wanted to take him out, like there were plenty of opportunities to do that well before that moment. You didn't have to risk your life and play into the game this long. It wasn't clear to me who was setting what up. Like, I didn't know if he set up the police in Nepal. They may have said it in the ending credits, but it was going by so fast that I missed some of that information. The short of it is that I just wasn't sure who to root for. Now, that being said, conceptually, I really like the story. Like, I like the idea, the heart of the idea, which is greed is tearing this family apart. Not just that, but Varadan was trying to get out of a bad situation what he perceived as a bad situation, which is he was under his father's thumb. The problem is we never saw the father like that.
Yeah.
So it was hard to empathize with him. It's like, as far as the movie showed us, it looked like the father was cool. Like, he was just a chill dude.
Exactly, and that is my thing. I feel like the movie did a lot of explaining. It was like, this is what my dad did to me. This is how I felt.
Yeah.
But I would have preferred it if we could have just seen scenes where you see the father doing that, or you see him being favored less over his brothers or whatever, so you feel it.
Right.
So rather than explaining to me, just show me.
Right.
And I'll feel it all.
I had mixed feelings about the music, and that's because there was music I loved in the film, but I didn't like any of the hip-hop sounding music. But I'm also not one who's into hip-hop music in general.
Right.
So whenever there was hip-hop music playing, it's like if it wasn't setting the mood for the scene, like we're in a room with thugs and gangsters that are in the streets, you know.
Right.
We're with upper crust mafia people. So for me, the hip-hop music wasn't really working for me. The rap music wasn't doing it for me. But the other music, particularly like just the score in general, was really moving. I like that. I like the other lyrical music in the film. Sometimes it kind of hit me abruptly, and I was like, okay, that was a bit sudden. Like when the father passed away, and then immediately the song comes in hard of, oh, my heart, how it goes. I mean, I'm just reading the English translation. it was like, okay, wait, just like come in a little softer. Like it just didn't feel like a gradient. It felt like a punch.
Right.
And maybe for Tamil audiences, it works really, really well. But for me, it was just very abrupt.
Overall, I like the music. I mean, I can definitely see your point about the hip hop music. I think that on its own, as part of a soundtrack, it's definitely something that I would listen to.
Okay.
I don't know if it was like the best place
Right.
in the movie,
Right.
but I enjoyed it.
So last thing I want to talk about is the action. I'm going to keep this part really short. I didn't like any of the action in this movie. The way it was shot, like it was in like stark contrast to the rest of the film. The rest of the movie is beautiful, and the action, it felt like every time there was action, to compensate for a lack of crafting it, the camera was just shaking a lot, and it felt like it needed to be cut more or undercranked because it was just this kind of awkward, elongated movement. I don't know, it just wasn't as well crafted as anything else in the film. It wasn't as well crafted as any of the acting, as the beautiful cinematography. It's like that's where the film really fell short for me, besides not being connected to characters. Like the action was the next thing where I'm like, it just felt like it deprived them. An otherwise beautiful film really fell short during fight scenes.
They weren't the strongest,
No.
but I will say that I did enjoy some of Arun Vijay's action stuff. It seemed to not really have any place, but like when he was tied up from behind and then he jumped through, I thought that was really cool. And then he had some cool like really acrobatic, like athletic things he did where he was like jumping around almost parkour-like, and I was like, ooh, that looked cool, but it didn't really seem to be part of his character, so it was a bit random.
Anyway, those are our thoughts on the film. I apologize if you loved the movie and we didn't express enough positive things that you wanted us to say. I don't have any regrets about watching the film. It was a beautiful picture and it had great cinematography, great camera work in general, and a DT. It was just a wonderful film aesthetically. You know, costumes, set design, production, like all of that stuff was great. We didn't connect with the characters, but for the aesthetic reasons, I'm glad that we watched the film. You guys let us know your thoughts on the film and your thoughts on our thoughts in the comments below. Be honest, be verbose. Thanks so much for hanging out. And if you're still here after this long review, hashtag a DT is an angel is the thing we'll go with, and yeah.
Well, let's find out if she's still single. So, you know, we all know that Priyanka is engaged now. Maybe
I'm pretty sure she's married.
Maybe a DT can be your new boo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's married.
Hashtag new boo.
Actually, that's so much better. Hashtag new boo is the better hashtag to go with. You always do that. You always want up my hashtag. Hashtag new boo. That's what we should go with. So if you're still here, hashtag new boo is the way to go. NEWBOO. And then people are gonna be like, what's that? And then you can, you know, it'll just make the comments more interesting. Thanks so much for hanging out. I am Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.